637, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on in to your Friday, September 6th, along with Joe and Jones. Johnny B, Dan Mandis here. Want to welcome into the program Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, always great to have you on as a legal analyst. You're, of course, an attorney, 17 years as a federal prosecutor and overall political analyst as well. Big news yesterday where Hunter Biden pleads guilty to all 9 counts of charges related to his tax evasion trial, including 3 felonies. Now, there's a lot here, so let's just kind of go through all of this. One of the things that I thought was always interesting, of course, is that they tried to get these charges against Hunter Biden so precise so that they wouldn't hook in Joe Biden. And so now he comes in and he's pleaded, guilty to all of these things. And I think part of that was to save Joe Biden and the family embarrassment.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And it is interesting that he did this sort of at the last minute. But the thing that's kind of funny about it is he probably did this to save not only Joe Biden embarrassment, but also to just show what was going on with this family, which is basically maybe more than embarrassing and maybe other things. But the funny thing is, with that prior case that went on in Delaware, the gun case, some of the most embarrassing facts came out in that case where, I think it was Beau Biden's, widow was smoking crack with him and things like that, that it's I don't know why they didn't plead guilty there. That one never made sense to me. I think there's something going on with Hunter just having, a life of never accepting responsibility. It's hard to start accepting responsibility. But I think the overall thing, and I think we've talked about this a few times, he's going to get a pardon. I mean, I would be shocked if Joe Biden doesn't give him a pardon, even though he said he's not. So at the end of the day, he'll still continue to live in this world that he's lived in, which has been a pretty nice life for him, where he's had no consequences and lived a life of, luxury beyond what most people would even imagine.
What's interesting is he comes in, and I don't know how much of the play-by-play you're familiar with, but he comes in with his lawyers. Originally, they wanted this Alford plea, I guess that's what you call it, which is basically maintaining your innocence but accepting whatever sentence the judge hands down, but no trial. Well, I guess what happened is the prosecutors, they pushed back on that big time, and so they were going through jury selection because it looked like they were going to have to go to trial. And so Hunter comes back in, and he just decided to plead guilty to all 9 of these charges. And so now I guess the question is, do you think that it was Hunter himself who pushed for this, or was it his attorneys? People are saying one way or the other that it is probably Hunter that just decided, okay, I'm done with all of this.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting move that he came in yesterday, and a couple things that are, from doing this for a long time, it's pretty rare in a federal case for somebody to come in and just surprise the government on day of trial. I certainly had a couple people plead the day of trial, but it would be, you'd get some advance notice from the defense team, hey, this is my guy changed his mind over the weekend, or we've been talking and he's going to plead. It wouldn't come as a surprise to the government. But what's interesting about this Alford plea, which doesn't seem to make any sense in terms of benefiting Hunter, I mean, part of the reason you plead guilty is to show the court that you're accepting responsibility for your bad conduct and in the hopes of getting more leniency. And the Alford plea is essentially, I'm actually innocent, but I want the consequences of being found guilty. And the Alford plea, just not go too much into it, but it was based on a death penalty case where somebody that was maintaining their innocence still wanted to be found guilty rather than having, and in exchange for the death penalty being removed as a consequence. So there was, some, rational reason for that. But judges hate Alford pleas, and the government doesn't like them either because it's somebody that they essentially want to get the benefits of a guilty plea but not accepting responsibility. So it doesn't really benefit him very much, and it looks pretty bad, that it's just, again, this guy is in a world of just not wanting to accept responsibility. But I don't know who's driving this, because if the lawyers are driving this thing, it seems like it's been a series of missteps every step of the way, other than when they initially had that really good plea agreement. But when that sort of started to unravel which was like a year and a half ago, they could have still clinged on to that and accepted some terms that were slightly worse for him, meaning not this. There was like this broad immunity provision in that initial plea agreement, which from a year and a half ago, but he would have gotten misdemeanor convictions, and they just sort of threw a tantrum and walked away as opposed to trying to salvage it, at least the way it appeared in the media. So it does seem like if the lawyers are driving this train, it does seem like it's been a series of missteps, because why do you go to trial in that gun case? The evidence was overwhelming, and it just embarrassed him, embarrassed the family. And then this case, it's just everything about it seemed like the evidence was overwhelming. His conduct was egregious. The stuff they were going to get into evidence was, spending, I think it was 6 figures on adult entertainment or something like that. So these things that would have come out that would look so bad for somebody that, he wants people to feel sorry for him because of his, drug problem. But then again, he's not living a hard life for a drug user. He's living, a life of luxury, like a rock star or professional athlete or something.
Well, and the thing is, he did put out a statement saying that he wanted to spare his family the embarrassment. But I find this interesting. One of the paragraphs, it reads, when it became clear that these prosecutors were focused not on justice, but on dehumanizing me for my actions during my addiction, there was only one path left for me. I mean, that backs up what you were saying, is Hunter Biden wants people to feel sorry for him. He wants people to believe that he is the victim. And I would just say to Hunter Biden, you are the one that dehumanized yourself, sleeping with all of those, prostitutes and the drug abuse and all of that other kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what Joe Biden does, because when he said that he would not pardon his son Hunter Biden, he was running for office. Now we know that he's not running for office. And so, Jonathan Fahey, I believe that you're right. He'll probably just go ahead and pardon Hunter and just let it be, because he has nothing left to lose. Quite frankly, he's clearly, obviously not running for political office again in his life. And the date of the sentencing is December 16th. And so that is going to be after the election, but that's also going to be before, January, 20th, when the next president comes in. So he's going to have the time, if he so chooses, to pardon his son Hunter. I believe that he will. Jonathan Fahey is joining us on Super Talk 99.7. The headline from CBS News, Jonathan Fahey, a judge in Donald Trump's 2020 election case, sides with the special counsel on the next steps after the immunity ruling. This is not great news for Donald Trump. Let's talk about what's going to happen between now and Election Day on this immunity case, because this is something that very possibly could really sting Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because, this judge knows this case cannot possibly be tried anytime in the near future, and certainly before November, and yet she's refusing just to kind of delay this thing for 60 days at this point, which, in anyone that's practiced, litigated or anything else, a 60-day continuance or something is really nothing in the court system, and particularly Washington, D.C. is not a particularly efficient court system. So, I do think it gives the special counsel a chance, I really think this last indictment was something that could have waited too, and we've talked about that, but it gives them another chance to file pleadings that just dirty up Donald Trump, talk about his conduct, things like that, and the media will sort of lap them up. And that will be, I don't know how damaging this stuff is, but I suspect for people that haven't decided, it certainly is damaging to Donald Trump, and it's totally unnecessary. And you read some of their pleadings, in this case and the Florida case, they really look a lot more like political documents in a lot of cases, sort of just, almost like they're writing them for the media as opposed to writing them for the court. So I do think that's going to be harmful to Donald Trump. I think this case, I think you were talking about the other day, I think win or lose on the election, I just see this, this thing probably just goes away ultimately, because if Donald Trump wins, we know it goes away. He can just dismiss it. But if Harris wins, it would seem like a very smart political move and a magnanimous move to just say, hey, let's just get this behind us, unite the country. It would make her look so good and get her presidency off to a phenomenal start. So it just seems like my guess is this case, Mar-a-Lago never, ever regain any traction or never get to any completion. And it just begs the question, is like, why can't DOJ wait? DOJ has a policy about charging people within 60 days of the election, but do it, because of, you don't want to affect elections. But clearly any actions done by the government against Donald Trump are going to potentially affect the election. So they should really, stick to the spirit of that policy and just say, hey, we're going to put it on a pause. We'll have, put a status on for November, a week after November 12th or something like that and restart things. But it does seem like it gives the opportunity for the special counsel to submit a pleading. But I think ultimately their case will fall apart just on the immunity issue. I just don't think they can weave this thing together. I don't know what their evidence is, but just my understanding of how they would have to try to prove things. I don't know that they get away from official acts of Donald Trump or things that could be considered official acts. And Justice Roberts, just real quick in that opinion, talked about when you're deciding whether or not something's an official act, which would then be immune or presumptively immune, you look to the outer limits of the president's authority. So basically anything that is arguably within his authority as president is an official act and therefore presumptively immune. And I think it's just going to be a very hard for them to sort of thread the needle on this thing.
Well, and it's obvious, I think, what they're trying to do. They're trying to get Donald Trump by keeping this into the media, keeping this in the media, and the media, of course, CNN and a lot of these other places. They'll continue to talk about this, and they'll continue to hammer the message because this is what they want to do. Meantime, this is how they're going to try to distract from Kamala Harris. And it's my belief, and I've only got about 90 seconds for this, but it is my belief that Kamala Harris, Train Harris, is going to lose steam. I think it already is because she's just doing some weird stuff. I mean, Tim Walz, every other day, there's some sort of a lie about, sort of a lie that he is told. Kamala Harris breaks out into the accents the other day. And I think that the more that the American people get to know Kamala Harris, the more bizarre she is, especially again, when she breaks out into these accents, and that's where they're going to go after Donald Trump. But, here we are in early September, and where do you think specifically Kamala Harris is right now? I know what the polling says, but my gut tells me that she is losing steam. Am I wrong?
That's my guess, too. And you just look at the way, I always watch the way they're acting, because it's a lot of times they have internal, polling that doesn't necessarily reflect what we're seeing in the public polling. So I don't think they're acting very confident in the states they're going to and other things like that. So I think they have to do something, and they can't, I think she's gotten, I think it was 84% positive media coverage. Yep. And even with that, she's, at best, I would say neck and neck, and it seems like Trump is probably, based on historical polling, if the Biden and Hillary Clinton polls, from 2016, 2020 are any reflection, those grossly overstated how well both Biden and Clinton would do in the general. So if those are any similarities to this, she's probably down a little bit. And I think the trick is with her, and everyone knows this, the more you get to know her, the worse she is. Yep. So it's sort of one of these weird things that you can't say, well, let's just go out and campaign more and do more interviews because she's such a disaster on substance. So it's such a tricky world to say we have to keep hiding her from people, but we have to maybe do something different. And it's like, what's the different thing? And Tim Walz has been, it seems like at this point, my guess is they wish they could have a do-over on that as well. But yeah, what do you do with Kamala Harris? Because she did one interview. What was that with Dana Bash a couple weeks ago or last week? Yeah. And it was just at best just flat for her. It certainly didn't do anything helpful, and I think she certainly didn't look like somebody that could be the president of the United States or have a command on the issues, which is really pathetic. And it's also pathetic that she's now hunkering down for 6 days for this debate, just like Joe Biden did for his debate. And it's like, you're debating on topics that are part of your job, and you need 6 days to learn them. It's so pathetic. It's like, what have you done for the last 3.5 years? And also, who's the president and vice president, because neither one of them seem to have any interest in actually doing their jobs at this point.
All right, Jonathan, have a great weekend. Always great analysis. Thank you very much for joining us, and sure, we'll talk next week as well. 6:53 on Nashville's Morning News.